top business stories live from the Sky News City studio. More problems for Boeing as two US airlines say they've found loose bolts on some of their 737 MAX 9 jets. Drugs giant GSK to pay up to $1.4 billion for a biopharmaceutical company that was only founded last year. Plus, YouGov completes a major acquisition. I'll be speaking with the chief executive. Good morning. This is Business Live with me, Ian King. The problems are mounting for Boeing this morning after two airlines said they'd found loose parts on some 737 MAX jets. US regulators grounded all MAX 9 planes after a cabin panel blew off an Alaska Airlines flight in mid-air on Friday. Ryanair's chief executive Michael O'Leary has called on Boeing to improve its safety control, telling the Financial Times that his airline's profits could fall due to delivery delays on its new aircraft. Shares of Boeing fell on Wall Street last night by 8%. Joining me now is John Grant, chief analyst at the aviation analytics firm OAG. John, welcome to you. Is this an issue with Boeing or is it more an issue with Spirit Aerosystems who make and install this particular part?
Morning, Ian. Good question. And I think it's going to fall between the two of them. You know, Spirit Aerospace create the fuselage. They build that, send it to the assembly line, and Boeing then attach the wings, the engines, and all of the wiring. Now, who's responsible for this? You know, did Spirit deliver these fuselages and they were not correctly equipped and they didn't do their necessary delivery inspections? Or did Boeing accept them at good value and good faith and should have done the checks themselves? So that's going to be one of the areas that people are going to focus on. And, you know, it's just a sloppy piece of work, again, from Boeing, who are unfortunately beginning to get a reputation for these types of things at the moment.
Well, they are indeed. I mean, there is something quite unusual about this particular panel, though, isn't there?
It's extremely odd. I mean, this is an aircraft that's designed and developed to carry 220 seats, a high-density aircraft, and yet the US airlines, specifically Alaska and United, are using it in 170-seat configuration and taking out or putting a plug in where the additional emergency exit would normally be. The reason they're doing that is, you know, their business model is slightly different. They have a business class, so they have less density on the configuration. And by doing that, you need one less cabin staff member for emergency incidents such as these. And that can save you a fortune if you think about how the cost of flight attendants, you know, you probably need 9 or 10 just to cover each aircraft. So from that perspective, it's a bit of a rogue aircraft in a fleet. And very few airlines have chosen this modification.
It's interesting you say that because, I mean, the 737 originally was redesigned rather than rebuilt from scratch in response to the success of the Airbus A320 families. You say Boeing have been sloppy. Was that the mistake? Should they have reinvented their single-aisle plane back in 2015?
I think you're absolutely right, and that's where Airbus went down a different path, and they did actually recreate, you know, the template, and have got variants that are different in many ways. Whereas Boeing tried to keep rolling out the latest version of V1, of V2, of V10, as we're at now, and it's come back to bite them. I think they were being expeditious. They were trying to minimise the operational cost for an airline of a new aircraft type, you know, a different flight deck configuration, different processes. And by that, they thought they were helping their airline customers by giving them the ability to transfer crews and cockpits and flight decks from one series type to another. And that's where the whole 737 MAX issue began 3-4 years ago.
Absolutely. And obviously, we had that lengthy grounding of the 737 MAX 8 back in 2019. Do you think Boeing have learned from that?
Clearly not. You can see that from what's happening now. You know, their integrity with the NTSB, the Federal Aviation Authority, was at an all-time low, and that, you know, they had put in steps and processes to recover that situation. This latest incident is going to do them no favours in that whole process, and they're raking up the issues that existed 2 years ago are going to come back again and again and again. Airbus are not in a position where they can benefit from this, ironically, because their production lines are full, their order books are full. And Michael O'Leary at Ryanair needs Boeing to deliver aircraft on time, and they've failed to do that for the last couple of years.
Absolutely. John, got to leave it there, I'm afraid. Good to talk to you this morning. Thank you.
Thanks.
Some other business news stories for you now. And the UK drugs giant GSK has agreed to pay up to $1.4 billion for a biopharmaceutical company that was only founded last year. Aeolios Bio, which is based in London and San Francisco, seeks to address the treatment needs of patients with respiratory and inflammatory conditions. Its main asset is an antibody used to treat severe asthma, licensed from a Chinese biotech company. The drug is set to enter phase 2 clinical trials imminently. Well, GSK will make an upfront payment of $1 billion and up to $400 million when the treatment passes certain regulatory milestones. The variety discount retailer B&M is to pay shareholders a special dividend after reporting better-than-expected Christmas trading. B&M, which currently trades from 717 UK stores and a further 453 in France, said group sales in the 13 weeks to the 23rd of December were up by 5% to £1.65 billion on a year earlier. It said like-for-like sales in the UK, the measure that strips out the impact for new store openings and refurbishments, were up 1.2% during the 14 weeks to the 30th of December. He said it was on track to open 76 new stores in the current financial year, including 45 in the UK. Shares of the recruitment and staffing group Hays fell by as much as 19% at one point this morning after it warned that its half-year profits would be worse than expected. Hays said that net fees in the final 3 months of the year were down 12% on 2022, with Australia and New Zealand off by 24% and the UK and Ireland down by 17%. Hays said it had seen a clear slowdown in most markets in December, most notably in its permanent staffing businesses, but it said it was too early to say if December's weakness reflected a sustained market slowdown or some placement deferrals. The online consumer research and polling group YouGov has today completed the €315 million acquisition of the German market research company GfK's consumer panel services business. The deal makes YouGov a much bigger player in the field of providing data on household purchases to companies in the fast-moving consumer goods sector. The businesses had bought supplies data from more than 100,000 households and 18 million shopping trips across 16 European countries. Well, with me now is Steve Hatch. He's the Chief Executive of YouGov. Steve, welcome to you. Remind me what the rationale was for this transaction.
Yes, well, good afternoon from a very sunny Nuremberg, and great to be with you today. And yeah, when the opportunity came up for the acquisition of CPS, the consumer panel business at GfK, we instantly saw the great strategic rationale that it fits with YouGov's ambition to be the leading provider of market research data. And in many ways, YouGov is famous for attitudinal data, so what people are thinking and how they're feeling, whereas CPS provides an incredibly strong data rich cache of purchase data. So this kind of combination of bringing together what people are thinking, what they're feeling, and what they're buying, we see as a way for offering even better value for our clients than we've been able to in the past.
Is there much overlap between your existing customer base and theirs?
Actually, another kind of good fit. This wasn't necessarily where we expected, but we went into the business, we saw that there is actually quite a low level of overlap between the existing CPS business clients, and they've been very long-standing clients. CPS is an organization that's been around for 60 plus years. Yeah, YouGov, not quite as long as that, but we've certainly been an innovator in the amount of time that we've had together. And whilst we've been great at growing through technology sectors, financial services and retail, actually FMCG has been one of the smaller verticals for us. So of course, there's a great strategic fit for us to increase that over time.
Does this take you into any new markets?
Well, it does actually, yes, and not just within kind of Europe, which is it also provides opportunities for us to expand the CPS offer into other markets in Europe, and also helps us take even more innovation to the US. We've stated that the US is our biggest strategic opportunity. In fact, it's already the largest market for YouGov. People are often surprised to hear that. There are associations with political polling in the UK rather than the kind of global company that we are. And we really expect kind of over time we'll be able to increase our market share of what over there, which is a $20 billion market in of itself.
Obviously, over the last 12 to 18 months, we've seen a big shift from branded FMCG goods to own brands in supermarkets. I imagine that's something your clients are quite concerned about.
Well, there's certainly a lot of innovation kind of taking place in the sector, and it's a very, very complex market. And in many ways, it's what made the kind of CPS acquisition for us even more attractive. You mentioned some of the stats about the millions of shopper journeys that are out there, 18 million kind of measured and tracked kind of every single year. But there's also 2.1 million SKUs, so like individual product items that the CPS panel manages and assess. So way that kind of clients and companies are thinking about this is, like all organizations, how can I be more data driven? How can I make sure that my business decisions are going to be the right ones? And data's playing an increasingly big part of that. And what we saw in the market was this desire to have more joined up data, a kind of single viewpoint. So, we expect to be offer kind of even more value in the past than we have in the future, I should say, than we have done in the future by bringing that together. And there's some great team of 1,000 experts in the CPS who know that market very well, combining that together with the 2,000 colleagues at YouGov.
Now, as you say, polling is quite a small part of your business, which will surprise a lot of people. But this is a huge year for elections, half the Democratic world going to the polls. Is that going to generate any sort of uptick in revenues for you?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, Ian. This is the single biggest year on record for democracy, with over 2 billion people voting across the world. As a percentage of our revenues, politics is about 5%. Again, people are maybe a little surprised to hear that. Of course, we do expect to see some increase in that over the next 12 months. But actually, it has a multiple impact for us from a business perspective, which is it increases the visibility of our brand and makes us kind of that much. We're already the most referenced market research company in the world, so it helps us do that, kind of in particular in the US, as I've mentioned already. And actually, it's often how panelists come and join our organization as well. So they'll see a kind of reference of YouGov, they'll see that in the context of the political sphere, and they'll want to get involved. So actually, that brand, that presence of politics enables us, yes, to grow our revenues, but also to build our brand and to grow our panelists as well. And we feel we've got a very big responsibility this year, the responsibility to make sure that we're fully representing people's views, and we're doing that in the most accurate way possible. In fact, I'm very pleased that over the last 7 national referendums or elections around the world, YouGov has been the most accurate pollster. And that's including in Spain, where we're the only organization to declare it as a hung parliament. And what's even I think more impressive about what their team did there, it's the very first year that we'd ever polled within that country as well. And then a lot of that has been driven by the new application of machine learning to enable us to be even more accurate than ever. So yeah, very, very big year for democracy, very important responsibility. And we're making sure that we're up to that, but we see it as a kind of good opportunity to build our business and also our brand, our panelists as well.
Steve, there's so much more I wanted to ask you, but we're out of time, I'm afraid. Thanks very much for joining me on such a busy day for you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, and great to speak.
Well, last night's rally on Wall Street, during which the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq enjoyed their best day since November, was followed by a largely positive session for stocks overnight in the Asia-Pacific region. Well, in Europe, stocks have been slightly mixed this morning. In fact, they're all in negative territory right now. Talking points include Hapag-Lloyd, which is up 2% in Frankfurt after the German shipping giant confirmed it will continue to divert its vessels away from the Red Sea. Well, here in London, the FTSE 100 is more or less at break-even right now in mixed trading. The defence contractor BAE Systems is the leading blue-chip gainer this morning, up 1.5% after announcing a new contract to provide gun systems for the Australian Navy's frigates. B&M, meanwhile, which I mentioned earlier in the programme, currently ahead by just under 1% after its Christmas trading update. To the downside, JD Sports is off another 3%. The broker downgrades are starting to come through now after last week's profits warning. Outside the FTSE 100, the fund manager Jupiter is off 13% after reporting client outflows of £1.1 billion for the last 3 months of last year, while the house builder MJ Gleeson is off 9% following a trading update. Meanwhile, I mentioned the Hayes profits warning. Well, the staffing group, Page Group and Robert Walters are off by 4% and 5% apiece in sympathy there. On the foreign exchange markets, well, it's another pretty subdued morning, to be honest, ahead of the US inflation release later this week. Sterling off just over 0.25% against the greenback, down 0.1% against the The euro, the single currency, meanwhile, off nearly a fifth of 1% against the dollar just now. As for the oil price, well, that has rallied after yesterday's big sell-off related to Saudi price cuts. A barrel of Brent crude will currently set you back $77.53 a barrel. That's up a little under 2% on the session. Well, joining me this morning is Guy Ellison, head of listed equities at Investec Wealth. Guy, very good to see you this morning.
Good morning.
What do you make of the oil price right now? I mean, it's a bit all over the place, isn't it?
Yeah, it really dominated the market trading session in the UK yesterday. We'd already heard a fourth quarter trading update from Shell yesterday morning, coincidentally, which was okay, strong at the upstream side of things and less so at the downstream. But it was an announcement by the Saudis later in the day that the premium that they charge to the local oil prices, which was $3.50 a barrel for their Asian customers, is being reduced back to $1.50 a barrel premium. That premium reflects, amongst other things, just the inherent quality of the Saudi oil, how easy it is to refine and to use. And in turn, that suggests that the Saudis are finding it slightly harder to sell oil at the volumes they would expect. At the moment, Asian customers seem quite well supplied, both from the Middle East, from US markets, from Europe. And inevitably, we presume a lot of Russian oil is finding its way into Asian end markets as well.
Yeah, I mean, it all creates a bit of a problem for OPEC, doesn't it, as well, because the US shale producers are flat out too.
It's been notable over the last couple of years, really, how disciplined OPEC has been, or OPEC Plus has been. Once upon a time, it would have been almost last man standing, and the Saudis, with the cheapest cost of production, would have sought to ensure that theirs was the last barrel of oil coming out of the ground. We've had much more of a joined-up approach from OPEC over the last couple of years, disciplined reductions in quotas, voluntarily in some cases, from Saudi Arabia, trying to keep the oil price at a level that supports their domestic economy. You noted the impact on the oil price itself, so Brent down to around $75 a barrel yesterday, West Texas, the US benchmark down to around $70 a barrel. Interesting the impact that that's having on US gasoline prices at the pump, something that the consumers are very sensitive to, particularly going into an election year. Back at $3 a gallon for gasoline in the US now, that's back to 2021 levels. We had seen gasoline at $5 a gallon midway through last year, so not unhelpful for President Biden.
Absolutely. What do you make? We haven't got much time left, Guy. I just wanted to get your views on B&M today. I mean, the stock price is up, but they didn't absolutely shoot the lights out, did they?
They didn't, but I think in the context of what we've seen so far from the retail sector in the UK, B&M and investors in B&M will probably take that as a result. It's always these first couple of weeks of the year, which are quite quiet on general corporate news flow, but we get all of those trading updates from the retailers. Superdry went early. They warned before Christmas had even completed that it was going to be a challenging period. But the key day was last week when both Next and JD Sports reported on the same day. And you saw Next up 6% on the day, saying things are not too bad. You saw JD Sports down 23% on the day, saying things are quite tricky out there. And so confirmation from B&M today that it has been a great period. Like for likes up just over 1%. That was towards the bottom end of the consensus expectations, but certainly not a disaster from their point of view. Lots more corporate news flow to come over the next few days. The likes of Greggs, Whitbread, Sainsbury's all updating tomorrow, so that should help us give a broader picture.
Yeah, should be great fun tomorrow. Guy, got to leave it there. Good to see you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, don't forget, the Sky News has launched its new daily money blog online and on the Sky News app. Scan the QR code on the screen now for details of significant mortgage deal cuts by Barclays and Santander. There's also a piece by me on Boeing's latest turmoil on the Sky News website if you want to have a look at that. Well, still to come here on Business Live. IFS, the $10 billion global cloud enterprise software company, has a new chief executive. I'll be speaking with him next. Stay with us.
They've pushed the protesters further back here. There's around 200 or 300 still remaining.
I'm Dan Whitehead and I'm Sky News' West of England correspondent.
This van goes onto the streets of Plymouth 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
These facilities at the moment are a lifesaver. It's all we've got.
From fishing communities to bustling cities, we spend every day reporting from across the region, hearing from people who have real stories.
I'll have nowhere to live for about 3 or 4 months.
There are still people inside the properties here.
They are coming from the epicentre of what is now a global health pandemic. We were seeing and speaking to young women who were selling themselves right on the high street. It was desperately sad, and the fact it was happening right in the heart of this community. Before Brexit, these oysters were being exported to the EU, but the trade stopped overnight.
What's your feeling about the future?
Blake might all be finished, I don't know.
Slide Emirates. Slide better. Fly Emirates. Fly better. Thank you.
Welcome back. IFS, the $10 billion global cloud enterprise software company, has appointed a new chief executive today. Mark Moffat was previously chief customer officer at the Swedish-founded but UK-based business, which employs 6,000 people globally. Well, IFS has more than 6,500 customers worldwide, including Electrolux, Auto Windscreens and Iceland Air. And I'm very pleased to say Mark Moffat joins me now. Mark, welcome to you. For those unfamiliar with IFS, what sort of services do you provide?
Good morning. So we provide global enterprise software for those types of companies you just described. So any company that's got complex operational processes or assets that need to manage, our software helps reduce costs, improve productivity and reduce complexity.
So who are you competing with? Is it the likes of Workday and Salesforce?
Yeah, so some of the larger, more established players, SAP, Salesforce, certainly would be two of them, but there's a range of different people that we compete with in our global operations.
Are people buying your services essentially then to reduce costs or make themselves more efficient?
Yeah, there's a whole series of things. So certainly AI is something that we've invested in significantly over the last 5 years. A number of our customers are using our planning, scheduling and optimization solution, which is AI-centric, to take massive costs out of their operation. An example would be, in fact, a customer I was speaking to yesterday took 13 million euros out of 40 million euro cost base and reduced their carbon targets by 30% as a consequence of using our AI software.
Wow. Interesting you mentioned carbon reduction there, because that isn't something that one necessarily associates with sort of this kind of software service.
No, of course. And what our software enables you to do is understand your detailed process and operational environment so you can identify the areas where you're carbon intensive, so it allows you to zero in, track and monitor and make sure you're delivering the carbon reduction targets that often boards are now setting.
Which are the industry groups where you're getting most demand just now?
So any asset-intensive operations or operationally intensive, so think utilities, aerospace, defence, manufacturing, telecom, those are the types of businesses. And it's all about, for us, our right to win is about where there's an intersection of asset management and service management. So a big asset together with big field forces, and we help optimise that.
But as I understand it, you also are quite happy to go for smaller customers as well. It's not a sort of one-size-fits-all service.
That's right. We've rapidly grown over the last 5 years in particular. 5 years ago, we were a 400 million top-line euro business, and now we're about 1.5 billion for the year ahead. So we've come from a heritage of serving kind of middle market, if you like, but we're right in the top tier now, and we're serving some of the most complex companies internationally.
You mentioned the growing importance to the business of AI. I mean, to that end, you completed a big deal in California last year. Are there more acquisitions planned?
Yeah, no, absolutely. AI is obviously the buzzword for us right now, and that's where a lot of the industry are focused. But we're looking at a range of M&A targets. We're lucky to be well capitalised with 3 private equity investors, and they're very supportive of us continuing inorganic growth.
Yes, you've had a bit of a reshuffle on the shareholder front. I mean, you do have more firepower at your disposal. Roughly how much?
Well, we're very lucky because we've got 3 top-tier private equity firms, and they've got capital available, and they're very supportive of what we delivered as a management and executive team. So there's a range of options, and really that's infinite as long as the business case is there for us.
Yeah, I mean, you were listed on the Swedish stock market until 2012 when you became owned by private equity. Can you ever see the business returning to the public markets?
We're constantly looking at all sorts of possibilities. Nothing planned in the short term, but obviously that's under constant review.
But I mean, London would love to have more tech companies listed here. Would London be a potential place to list if you went down that road?
Yeah. Well, as a Brit, I would love to see technology more prevalent on the London Stock Exchange. Clearly, over the last few years, there's a lot of businesses that have been listing in other markets. And I think, obviously, there's a job to be done to make it attractive for businesses like IFS. So, as I said, we'll keep that under constant review.
All right, stay tuned. Mark, good to talk to you this morning. Good luck. Thank you. Well, just before I go, we've just had a statement from Boeing following the grounding of its MAX 9 jets in the United States. Boeing says, as operators conduct the required inspections, we are staying in close contact with them and will help address any and all findings. We are committed to ensuring every Boeing airplane meets design specifications and the highest safety and quality standards. We regret the impact that this has had on our customers and their passengers. Well, more no doubt on that story throughout the day here on Sky News. That's it from me for the time being. I will be back at 4:30 this afternoon. Hope very much to see you then. In the meantime, do stay tuned. Wilf is back after this short break. See you later. Cheerio.